So the first cat that I owned, and whenever I say I owned it, like I was a little kid, so my mom owned it, but it was called Smokey. And the only thing I really remember is kind of like a white gray cat, one of them real fluffy ones, had, you know, kind of like the 2-3 inch long hair. And, you know, I just remember, you know, it's like a couple of pictures of me with it as like a little kid, toddler, you know, and, but yeah. And the second cat we owned, which was a tomcat, its name was Rudy. And that was kind of the first time that I actually realized that cats are, you know, they're not bad animals. And but it was one of them ones that, you know, it'd be gone for 3-4 days and, you know, come back all busted up. You know, I think one time it had like half its ear bit off by something. You know, and this is back in the day. I mean, this is, you know, about 40 years ago. But it was I believe they call it a Russian blue. You know, it's kind of short-haired, blackish, grayish color. But yeah, it'd come up. We had that cat for many, many years. You know, and not really the most loving cat. Like it would come up and, you know, I'd just kind of pet it and be like, "Hey, buddy, where you been? You know, life's been rough. I fully understand." So, and I think that was kind of the last cat as a child. I mean, we had a couple of strays that, you know, wandered around, but when my mom remarried, my stepdad, you know, he was a dog guy, so we ended up having dogs, and the dogs kind of kept all the cats away. So, and then, you know, of course, I went into the Marine Corps, and there's no time for cats in the Marine Corps. There was a couple of, you know, random cats that kind of hung around the outskirts, but on base, cats don't really make it on base very long. But then I get out of the Marine Corps, I come back here, and I think the first place that I got, well, I had an apartment for a while, and then I moved into this raggedy trailer behind a Mitsubishi dealership. And there was a stray cat that, you know, come up on the porch every so often, but I was working so hard trying to figure out life, you know, like if it was there, I'd pet it and let it come inside, you know, and just kind of fed it some scrap food, but it wasn't my cat, you know, it just kind of like a neighborhood, you know, neighborhood whore cat, just went around and got pregnant everywhere. So, but then I finally bought my house and got settled in, and I was, there used to be like a little garage onto the back, or like a little detached garage in the back part of my house, and it was like, it had giant spiders and rats and all kinds of stuff in there. And one day I was out in the backyard and I heard this little mew, mew. So I'm gonna go out there and there's one random kitten just inside the garage. So, you know, I left it out there for a little bit. I think I was out there for like a full 24 hours thinking, you know, I didn't want to mess with it so the mom could get it. And turns out the mom abandoned it because for like a full 24 hours, it just, the mother cat never came back. I don't know what happened. I don't know if she died or what, or, you know. Well, I should say after taking ownership of that cat, that one I think was certifiably screwed up in the head. Like, you know, it had mental issues. And I'll never forget it. I had a very large black friend of mine named Benny. He worked with me for, you know, a while, and he was like every bit of 300 pounds. And that little tiny kitten chased his ass out the house. You know, like wanted to legitimately kill him, you know, and he was scared to death of that cat. So, and because they asked what was your first pet, I'm not going to say the name of that one on the internet, but it had a unique name, let's just put it that way. So anyways, time goes by and I ended up getting the cat that I had for 16 years. Another Russian blue, but it was like black, had kind of like green blue eyes. I mean, it was a really wicked cat. I mean, like, it was my cat. Like, that cat didn't give a shit about anything. It only hung around me. That was Tinkerbell, and I had her for, I think, 16 years. So, and she was my house cat. She never went outside. She was a permanent inside. She was scared to death of the outside. So, but while having Tinkerbell, I had a warehouse over here on where my warehouse is now, just a little bit down the street. And I had one cat that I called Ruff. And it was kind of like Rudy. It would come in every so often. Like, I would have the door open because I didn't have air conditioning at my other warehouse. So I'd be in there late at night working and just have the door open to get some fresh air in. and it would come in, just hop up on the desk or hop in the chair next to me and just crash out and fall asleep. And, I'd fed it and I watered it and I had stuff there for him. But, if he showed up, he did. If he didn't, he didn't. But Ruff was kind of like, I guess I had partial ownership for about 2-3 years while I was over there. So then one day he just didn't show up, and never saw him again. And during all this time, I still had Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell was like my ride or die cat. So, and then I say about a year after Ruff disappeared, there was this beautiful long-haired cat. I mean, yes, for whatever reason, why this cat was a stray or outside, I had no idea, but probably one of the most beautiful cats I ever seen. And I think it was a female, because she'd come prancing her little ass up in my warehouse, and she just chilled out, like just cool as any cat I've ever seen. And I named her B, short for beautiful, because it was just, like I said, absolutely beautiful cat. I mean, never got mange, never got anything, but had like ridiculous long, like 4-inch long hair. So, and she kind of hung out around the warehouse for about 2 years until someone poisoned her, which I still have a hint on who it is. This person may or may not in life, but hope it would never be by me. But I hope this person, if he did that, goes to a point of hell that I do wish it on him. But anyway, someone poisoned her, and I found her like in the parking lot, just dead. And there's a really sad story about that, and I'm not going to get into it here. So, and then, oh yeah, and I have to tell you, going back on Tinkerbell, which Tinkerbell's still around at this point. I was on a job where I was enclosing a roll-up garage door, okay? And, I'm framing up a wall and putting in windows where a roll-up garage door was. And I also built a set of staircases and, a couple other things in this house. Well, I'm sitting here doing all this work, and, and there was a little box of kittens that were kind of like in the garage. And I'm banging and, shooting a nail gun and everything, and all the other kittens left. They all ran away. And that one little black cat just stood there and watched me work. And I didn't even know I wanted a cat at this time. And I say, hey, and they say, do you want a cat? I was like, not really. I says, but if you can't get rid of this one right here, I'm down for that one. But I said, I want you to try to get rid of them. I really don't want a cat, but I was like, if this one here, and they called me like a week and a half later, they're like, listen, nobody wants this cat. This cat is for you, period, So I was like, all right, whatever, just, I'll be over there tonight and I'll pick up the cat. So I went and they just gave me the cat. So, and that's how I ended up getting Tinkerbell. So, but yeah, I had her, like I said, I had Tinkerbell for like 16 years. And I don't know how I got my final cat, which was Penentius, short for pain in the ass. Oh no, I do remember now, sorry. So a friend of mine, Alex, he's a mechanic and he was working up at Toyota. Now he's a avid cat lover, more than me. I'm okay with a cat. They're pretty much, like easy pets to have. But he called me up one day and he's like, hey, I got this cat. And it was in an engine bay. It was a kitten, And he's like, hey, I found this cat in the engine bay. It's a cool cat. Do you need another shop cat? Because at this time, this is right after, B died or was killed. So I says, you know what? Yeah, I'm down for another shop cat. So I got Penentius, and I brought her here. And I was still at the other shop whenever I got Penentius before I moved over here. And I had her in the office, and she went outside, but she was kind of scared of being outside too. And but this cat is the most lovable cat. Like, I've never had a cat that demanded attention. Like if I'm sitting here talking on the phone, this cat would try to get in between my phone and my face. And anytime I was trying to do work, she was like hugging my arm. If I was, on the writing something or on the computer with the mouse, she would come over and just grab my arm and just hug it. Not bite it, not fight with it, just hug it. So I was like, okay, you are not a shop cat. You do not belong in a warehouse. So I took her home, And her and Peninthius, for the most part, got along. They had their little tiffs, but as time went, they kind of became friends. And then Tinkerbell ended up getting leukemia or some kind of, I think it was leukemia, cancer, like cat leukemia. So unfortunately, we had to put her down because it was just not a fixable situation, and she was on the verge of starting to struggle. So that happened. So and then now Peninthius is alone in my home, and she's never really been alone, and I'm out working and stuff. So every time I came back, things were getting messed up, and she started peeing outside the litter box because of that, and I went and spent probably 3 months trying to figure out a solution, on doing that. I was like, listen, I can't have this cat peeing in my house. So I kind of made her an outdoor cat, which to this day I regret doing. But, she would pee on my bed. She would pee. I had to rip apart everything in my house because of where she peed and everything. It got really bad in my house. So anyways, I had her as an outside cat, and for about 6 months she was a good outside cat. In the mornings, whenever I turned on the light, she'd come up to the door, and I still let her in the house. I just couldn't leave her in the house by herself. And then one morning, unfortunately, I turned on the lights. She came running across the road, and the car ran over her, and I had to find her that way too. So, but after all that, I don't know if I want another cat. I'm tired. I'm kind of tired of cats, or just anything dying. So, but that's the history of me and cats. Meow.